So some of the Avengers, ladies and gentlemen, have been talking, and I find this to be fascinating. Now, a lot of this has to do with a new article that is out there about Chris Hemsworth. He had a big spread in Vanity Fair. I'm sure some of you guys checked this out. I'm sure many more of you read the headline that Chris Hemsworth feels he owes audiences for Thor 4, that he wants to make it up to them, you know, he's sorry, etc., etc. It's a really good article. You know, it's kind of sprawling. It talks about Hemsworth, where he's at in his career, the ups and downs. He definitely wants everybody to know that he doesn't have Alzheimer's and he's not retired. Remember when that story came out and it kind of got blown way out of proportion? He certainly feels that way. But another thing that's interesting in this article is Robert Downey Jr. pops up. Like, all of a sudden, like, we're reading this big spread about Hemsworth, and all of a sudden, like, RDJ pops in to give a couple quotes, put some context in there, and say some things, and you're just like, what the hell's happening here? Why is Robert Downey Jr. Like, it's like Tony Stark literally has to be there when the press is speaking to the Avengers or something. It had like that kind of a vibe. Like, I literally do not know why Robert Downey Jr. pops up in this article to give some context. And there's also a portion in this article where they're talking about Chris Evans' wedding and some of the vibes, man. I continue to tell you guys, I think a lot of the OGs are coming back. Feels to me like we're getting to a place where, with all of these actors, where it's been so long since they were in their MCU heyday, a lot of stuff has happened to them. They've had a lot of life experiences, but I also feel this kind of, I don't know, maybe it's like a cathartic thing, or maybe it's like a nostalgia thing, but it almost feels like they're all preparing to get back together and do a lot of work together. Anyway, let me just read the article and explain what I'm talking about here. He was a 25-year-old unknown when he booked Thor, one of the greatest gifts of his life. Leone got a note from the first film costume designer, who told her that all of the actors who screen test for the role, only Hemsworth and his younger brother Liam, hung up their costumes afterwards. I had to laugh, Leone tells me. That wasn't necessarily what they did at home. Grateful as he was for the opportunity, Hemsworth grew frustrated by playing the great Asgardian defender. Sometimes I felt like a security guard for the team, he says. I would read everyone else's lines and go, oh, they got way cooler stuff. They're having more fun. What's my character doing? It was always about, you've got the wig on, you've got the muscles, you've got the costume, where's the lighting? Yeah, I'm part of this big thing, but I'm probably pretty replaceable. And then, like, Iron Man shows up. And he's like, fuck all that. His friend and co-star Robert Downey Jr. won't hear of such talk. First off, Thor as a character was super tricky to adapt, lots of implied limitations, but he and Ken Branagh figured out how to transcend, make him somehow relatable but godlike, he says. Hemsworth is, in my opinion, the most complex psyche out of all us Avengers. He's got wit and gravitas, but also such restraint, fire, and gentleness. Wow. You know what I mean? It's crazy that he's even in here, like, talking. Like, I still don't fully understand it, but, you know, damn, coming in and dropping, I think, some truth with regards to Chris's feelings, but we'll break it all down in a second. So, when Taika Waititi came aboard to direct 2017's Thor Ragnarok, he was as eager to tweak the Thor character as its megastar. They decided to have some fun with tone, letting Hemsworth dig into his natural comedic gift, with the character wonderfully reduced to a god with a dad bod, wallowing and brokenhearted. They talk about Cate Blanchett here coming in, and she had no idea, like, just how goofy he was or how much of a goofball he was. Downey calls Hemsworth's work in Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame a formidable hat trick, but then came Love and Thunder, for which Hemsworth still can't forgive himself. And here's the quote here. I got caught up in the improv and the wackiness, and I became a parody of myself, he says. I didn't stick the landing. Now, earlier on in the article, it also talks about how he feels like he owes the fans. That's not a direct quote. It's something kind of that they just put in there after spending some time with him, okay? So that's the quote. That's what a lot of people are talking about. Now, let's talk about the wedding, because they talk about the wedding here, and then I want to do like a breakdown of what I think is going on here, why this is so freaking awesome, and why I'm excited to see more Thor, okay? Recently, several Avengers gathered in the name of love at Chris Evans' wedding in Boston. Hemsworth brought his mother as his date, whom Downey calls a complete hoot. There's a lot of her in him. Hemsworth hadn't seen Jeremy Renner since the freak snowplow accident that hit the Avengers text chain like a bullet. He sent us all a sort of doped out, hospital beat up image and said, "All good, guys." And then I didn't hear from him for a while as he was in the thick of it. At the wedding, the gang rallied around their risen friend. If there's one characteristic we'd all agree is paramount, Downey says, of their crew, it's resilience. To see Renner embody that literally and in the context of what was basically a Portuguese-American wedding was mind-blowing. Fully recovered and ready to celebrate. So yes, miracles happen. There was an astounding sense of gratitude from him just being alive, agreed Hemsworth. He's holding tightly onto that, especially now. So kind of interesting. Okay, couple of moments there. Now, I want to kind of just break all of this down for you guys and give you my thoughts as to why this is a big deal and what is the deal with this. So number one, we already knew about rumors of a fifth Thor movie, and even when that first dropped, a lot of people seemed positive on it, which is interesting. I think most people regard Love and Thunder as pretty terrible, but a lot of people, whether this is the actual case or not, a lot of people just think it was Taika Waititi's fault. I personally think a lot of Marvel fans forgive Chris and blame Taika. That's the way I view it. That's the way I think most fans view it. That's what I saw online out there. And look, that movie, they were shooting. It was, early days of lockdown. They were in a different country. There's so much confusion. And I kind of think most of them just goofed off way too much. A lot of us don't really even blame Chris. But I got to tell you, man, as a fan, it really does mean a lot to me when I hear somebody talking like this, okay? He's actually not blaming Taika, number one, so he's not blaming anybody. He's taking accountability. He's talking about how, he became a parody of himself. He didn't nail the landing. He feels like he owes fans. It means a lot. What you say matters. The words you choose to use, they matter. Like, I was like, damn, like, that's fucking cool. Again, we didn't even really blame this dude. I appreciate that, and I like that. In the context of this article too, where he's talking about his career, and again, like, part of this article is literally he just wants to scream from the fucking mountaintops, I don't have Alzheimer's, I'm not retiring, I'm doing more work, is kind of the attitude. I find it really cool and interesting that he mentions the Thor thing, talks about how he owes us, and it just feels good, and I think he is coming back, and I think he's going to do some good work. The other thing, of course, that's kind of interesting about this article has to do with Robert speaking up the Avengers for Evan's wedding and that sort of core group of people. And I just kind of have the vibe that a lot of them are reaching the same point in their life. Like, you look at Hemsworth and he leaves, he still does Thor Love and Thunder, but he's doing a lot of work outside of the MCU. He's not really super involved right now. And he's had some success. He's done a lot of things that, the Extraction movies. He's in Furiosa or Furiosa or whatever. So he's, doing his thing. And the article itself takes you through the mindset of somebody that doesn't know what their career is going to be like after having this sure thing. Experimenting, trying to sort of find himself, also having a bunch of kids in a short period of time. Like, it really takes you through the mindset of a person that ages up, and I personally feel comes to a place where they sort of realize they're still not done with that character and realizes there's more to do and more legacy to sort of lay the groundwork for. And I mean, I've said this to you guys many times. I know we have conflicting opinions about bringing the Avengers back, right? But I think that that same thing that happened to Hugh Jackman, which was like, he's done, man. He's done, and he's done for a while. He's watching all this stuff transpire, watching the space, and then like he just kind of realizes he's not really done. He has more to do. He wants to do more. And it's like an athlete. I think, you look at Brady, you look at some of these athletes. I mean, freaking Mike Tyson at 60 years old is about to box again. When you do a thing and you're good at it, that feels really good. It just feels good in your life to be like, okay, this thing that I do, I'm good at, I'm providing, I have influence. I have like all of these good things are coming through me just doing this thing that I love. And I think a lot of people can relate to this feeling of, well, I need to do something else, because it can also become a trap, right? And the more you do the thing, like there are moments where you get kind of sick of it. There were moments in the MCU where some of these characters' futures with the character was uncertain. I remember like, oh, is there going to be more Chris Evans as Cap? Is there going to be more Thor? And then they end up like, signing and doing an extended thing. Now they've all gone away for the most part. They've gone away. And I think a lot of them are starting to realize that going back, reliving that, and having another one of those kind of moments or, time periods is actually good. And not to get like too spoilery, right? But we're talking about a wedding with a guy we know is signed. Chris Evans. You're going to see him probably sooner than you would think. Again, let's not go crazy on the spoilers. And he's already signed to be in Secret Wars as well. So he's there. Robert Downey Jr., who's out here doing interviews and also sneaking into other Avenger interviews. What the hell? We know he's signed too. That dude's coming back. So they're sort of all circling this idea. The other week when it was reported that Feige told the Avengers to clear their schedules, that does include some of the new people, but it also includes a lot of the OGs. They just signed up for another 3, 4, maybe 5 years, depending on what it all looks like. So I found this article to be really illuminating as far as the mindset of a lot of these actors, mostly Chris, but through proxy of like RDJ and even the wedding and Renner and all that. I think that group chat right now, oh my God, if somebody could get me access to that Avengers group chat right now and the amount of stuff that they're speculating, talking about and all that. So that's another part of this that's really interesting. Now, last bit on this, let's talk about the character of Thor, because I actually agree with Downey. I think most of you in chat do as well, right? I agree with Downey that Thor's character arc through Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame, incredible stuff. Maybe a little not so much in Endgame. I wasn't the biggest fan of him getting fat. But my point is, dude, he has such a great arc from Ragnarok into Infinity War. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it had a great character stuff. He's the glue of Infinity War, dude. That arc in Infinity War for him, mind-blowing, okay? So Thor has had incredible moments, like all the stuff he was saying, like, oh, I think I'm replaceable, this, that, second, and the third. Nah, man, like, I understand why Downey had to come in and interrupt this interview. He's like, I'm gonna let you finish in a minute, but Thor had one of the best arcs of all time. And I agree with Downey. So that's number one. But here's the thing. Loki also had an incredible arc around that same time. Ragnarok into Infinity War is a beautiful arc for Loki, which then affects the arc of Thor, the brother, right? And yet, we know that they took Loki out of the timeline and gave him somehow, some way, an even more incredible arc. The arc for Loki in his own show is just as good, if not better, than the arc that Thor had in Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame. So now the game has changed. And I think you need to do something special, something significant with the Thor character to make it so the next time he meets Loki, which I think he will, we need Thor to feel like he has also gone through that level of growth, that level of change. In this article, Hemsworth talks a lot about just wanting to be respected by his peers, wanting to come from the comic book thing and be a little bit more respected just kind of overall. I think that was also a big thing for Downey on a side note. And, some guys think, oh, Downey's got Oscar gold now, he's not coming back to Marvel. I completely disagree. I feel like that was what Downey needed to prove to himself that he can do it outside of the genre and be recognized by his peers. I feel like now he has that validation and now he's ready to come back and play. That's just how I see it. I think Hemsworth is looking for that as well. And this is cool, man, because what we're really talking about here is the ability for this Marvel character and this Marvel character actor who is like a pretty cool fucking guy. Like Hemsworth is a pretty cool guy. Again, the humility, the willingness to say, I owe the fans. I respect it a lot. I really do. They can do something special. It doesn't have to just be the let's fix Thor tonally. And I don't think it should be that. It should be, what can we do with Thor that will give Chris something pithy, something to chew on, something to like feel challenged by as an actor, something that's really interesting for the audience, something that's a little less goofy and a little less parody of himself, as he explained, and something that is big, grand, cosmic, epic in scale. Because I think Thor still holds on to a lot of guilt about the Thanos thing, right? So the recipe is great. The table is set. I'm really excited. I find this whole situation with Hemsworth, Thor, him apologizing, essentially wanting to make it up to the fans, and the fact that Loki is where he is at, and we somehow want to get Thor there. Like, that's like a beautiful thing. So I think this is fantastic news. And I think it also kind of speaks to the attitude of the OG Avengers, that group chat, and the fact that a lot of them are coming back. And they're not just coming back for a check. They're coming back because they did something truly incredible before. As time goes on, it becomes more and more obvious how special that era was, how special those movies were. This is legacy stuff. And I think they want to feel that again and potentially even do that again. So I'm excited. I really like hearing these words, and I just like kind of the energy that's around Marvel right now. I know there's obviously a lot of haters, a lot of people that doubt, a lot of people that have just been burned, and I totally get that. But I think for some of us that are really hardcore and have been really in this space, I'm excited because I think they're all going to have a chip on their shoulder. I think the genre's in question. I think Kevin Feige's in question. And I think, frankly, at this point, the Avengers and Marvel Studios may well be underdogs as far as whether or not they can reclaim the glory and become what they were. And I like an underdog. So that's the report. That's what the Avengers are saying. And that's why I'm so hyped